All right, last session of the day. Thank you very much. So this is a special session. Before we head out, excuse me. All right, thank you. That actually brings a lot of things together. That was a surprise to have some guests that we weren't sure until the last moment we were going to get here to actually talk about some experiences, and this ties into a lot of things that we do. You've heard me talk about DPGs, digital public goods. You've heard me talk about how important it is that we integrate with them. And a big part of that, I mean, we've the big one that we're very interested to integrate into is Mosip, which is an identity DPG. The Mosip Mojaloop integration stack is, we think, potentially the most important one out there. Paul Macon is doing a lot of work with that for the G2P Connect project, and that seems to have a lot of traction in a number of countries and a lot of interest in a number of countries. So that's one thing. The other thing why what we're about to talk about is incredibly important. The other reason why what we're going to talk about is important is how we talk to anyone who's been in any of these conversations with me, talking with governments about using open source and using open source DPGs, realizes that there's a lot of confusion about what that means and what's the role of the government, what's the role of the implementers. One of the things about Mosip that's very interesting is they have a very different implementation and support model than Mojaloop does. Incredibly different. Not all of the DPGs have very different models. And what a lot of the world is looking at right now is the Mojaloop model versus the Mosip model. It's within the DPG world comes up quite a bit. So why this is exciting is that the Republic of Guinea was one of the first countries, or the first country, to implement Mosip. And they are now very interested in implementing Mojaloop. And as part of that, they'd like to see how those integrations would happen. And that would be incredibly exciting within months of saying, hey, we want to integrate Mojaloop and Mosip, to be able to say, and we have a country that's interested in doing it. And from those of us who've worked with implementations, having a partner within the government that actually has experienced with implementing an open source DPG overcomes a lot of the burdens that I think most countries have to do. So this is why it's incredibly interesting for us to have these two gentlemen with us. All right. So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Himedine. Are you going to do? So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Himedine, and I think Ferdinand will be talking as well to discuss, introduce themselves and talk to us about their project with Mosip and how it went, what their experience was. Again, very different implementation model. So please pay close attention to the nuances and ask any questions. I'm not saying we're talking about changing our implementation model, but there's a lot we can learn from what Mosip does and the experience that they've had on implementing an open source DPG. By the way, did not mention this, Dr. Himedine was the original technical director of the Mosip project before the success of that project landed him in the Prime Minister's office, leading the digitization strategy of the entire country. So with that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Himedine. Do you want to speak here?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone. As he mentions, in Guinea, we today develop Mosip as an identification platform, and Mosip is a modular open source ID platform. But before talking about the project itself, I would like to show you the country Guinea, because I think a lot of people don't know where it is. So Guinea is a country in West Africa, surrounded by Senegal, Mali, Côte d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, and also Liberia. So Guinea is, the capital is Conakry, population 12.5 million, and a total area of 245,000 kilometers square. The official language is French. The SWOT analysis of Guinea show as strength the ability to handle projects. We set up Mosip project ourselves by a technical team built in Guinea. We also have today our national strategies of identification and also financial inclusion. And we have experience on open source solution, experience on open source project. And as Steve said, we are the first country to implement Mosip from scratch. As a weakness, I can mention today, we have two main issues: identification issues and also financial inclusion issues. We have over 4 million people who don't have no ID. And today, everybody know if you don't have ID, you could be excluded from the society, from the community, and so on. Financial inclusion, we have over 8 million out of 12 million people in Guinea. So which means an opportunity to work with Mojaloop and create this interoperability. And if you see, these two issues are very linked together, because we can't talk about financial inclusion if we are not able to identify people who have to get this money, who have to get these services. So as opportunities in Guinea, we have a political will, the support from the Prime Minister itself. We have also the regulation, the strong regulation about telcos, about digital financial services. And today, private and public services are really motivated to communicate each other, to be interoperable. The problem or the threat could be the competition with private services. As you know, when you have this big project in the country, you have also procurement process, and we talked about big money. So you have stiff competition between with private services. And today, digital services are considered for us as an opportunity to increase our GDP. So today, we have a lot of taxes on digital services. And the resistance also to the changes. That's very important, because people have bad habit, and digital today means good governance. So people are sometimes resistant to do these big changes. So as I mentioned, with two main issues, we try to solve the first one, like identification first. Identification before financial inclusion. So that's why we define our project around three components. The components, one is legal and institutional framework. Like we have to build a good regulation framework before establishing the technical platform, Mosip or Mojaloop. The second component of our national strategy is to establish a robust and inclusive foundational ID system. We base this foundational ID system on Mosip, and my colleague will give you more information about that. And the second one is access to services. Why we want to implement ID system or financial inclusive system or other system. At the end, the main goal is to facilitate access to services. So for us, digital platforms are tools to improve life conditions, to improve access to services, and also to improve our governance. So how we address the identification issues in Guinea, how we build the national biometric ID system, we will share with you our experience based on Mosip, the modular open source identification platform founded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as well, and other Omida and Tata Trust. So please, Ferdinand.
Okay, thank you. Here, the journey to achieve the implementation of Mosip was a long journey. So the first thing, it was like how we need to define, the strategy on which we are going to follow for that implementation. So that started, when we defined the strategy, we went with the building of a technical team. In that moment, Dr. Toure was the director, and myself, I was hired in that team. And we have any other, colleague who came and participate on that building. And after that, when we finished to have the team, we went for the training of the technical team. And for that, after the training of the technical team, we came with Uni 1.0. That was the version we came with that. And with that version, we went for the deployment. And with that, we went to do the enrollment. And at the end of the enrollment, we come with this number that we're able to give as the identification number to everyone. So how we did that? The development of the roadmap, the technical partnership with the Mosip was done first. And then the problem was why open source? Why we decided to go with the open source? It was simple because we don't want to have the vendor lock-in issue. So in the country, everyone knows that we have a lot of other biometric system, but somehow when the time came, it is difficult for those biometric systems to enter operability with other systems. So we convert the government in that it would be better to go with open source. And then based on that, it can be more easier for us to talk with other systems. And then when we look at around, Mosip was the best choice for that moment. So when we decided to go with the Mosip, the framing of the implementation, the functional level requirement, the technical level, task management, and training of the team was done. So for that, the first things was, like Doctor was explaining, we had a 3 component. The first component was the law strategy to make sure that there is a law when we develop this biometric system, it can respect some regulation. So that one was done in the first component. And the second component was what we did for the development of the system. So in that, after having the team around to go to work with that, the second thing was to develop the biometric system. And then when we finished the development and everything, we went to hire around 20, operator agent to help us to go for the registration around 10 cities and some villages even in Guinea. So, and one of the interesting things that we done was like, we tried to implement the system on premise. So we had a data center in Guinea, the name is GitLab. So for there, we went to hire us a space, give her the space. So through that space, we bring our servers, we make sure that we bring our own internet connection. We did the deployment and everything. And for that, we were able to do the registration. And the things that was, very important, and the government was, worried about that. It is how you guys are going to do the security part and all. But by the grace of God, it was something that we done very well, because myself, I am a security engineer. So we work on that strategy, and then everyone was happy. And at the end, we were able to register over 8,000 people in Conakry. Conakry is actually the capital. Forikaria, it is another city. Kindia is the city. Mamu and Labe, they are another city. And that was around June and July. And the next is we went, it was very simple. So we tried to make the technical team. We didn't, had a lot of person in the team, but we tried to have people who has really the skill to do the work. So we had a technical director, a technical lead, a backend developer, front-end developer, business analysis, and network and security engineer, and a test engineer. Somehow they were able to do, both of the work together. So, but the team, to make the team, it was also a great challenge, because we were even able to hire some of the engineer who came from Texas, for example, for our business analysis, who came from Canada, and all, to make sure that the team here is ready to do the exact work. So this was actually how we plan, to have the team. And after that, we use a use type of technology. Some of the technologies, it is here. Mosip basically is based on Java. So in the Java, we try, to customize that one. The first thing, the front end was there. And then in the front end for Java, because in Mosip we have, basically for the front end, we have the pre-registration and we have the registration. So what happened, for example, if I want to get to register and then I want to take an appointment from my home, I have that pre-registration application, like it is just a web application on which you will go and get to register yourself. And directly when you come to the center, you will give your registration number. And based on that registration number, you can now go and take your biometric information and all. So for that prereq part, it was done in Angular. So after that part, when you come to the center and you want to register yourself, so the front end over there also was done in Java FX. And then for the middleware, Spring Boot was using to do that work. And then in the back office, Mosip, it is based on Hadoop, and they are using the file system HFS to do the work with that. So, and after that, what was interesting it's like we use for the orchestration, we use a Kubernetes, and everything was based on Docker. And we create the Docker instances based on the Kubernetes to do the orchestration and try to build the data center around that. And after, we use like, the agile methodology. Our code is even available on GitHub. What is interesting is like, after we finish the customization, and most of the country, they try to follow the way we did the customization. Even, I saw that the day before we came here next week, Atos did some presentation, and that presentation was based on our contribution that we did basically in Guinea. It was something that we were a little bit proud of. So, and after that, this was the code part, and then we need some devices for the registration. So we went with Mantra. Mantra is a device provider for registration. Synbike was the device provider for the registration as well. So those are some of the technology we use for that. So you can see like the devices we use there to go with the registration. First, you need to have a laptop, printers, and slide scanner, iris scanner, and so on, with camera, of course. So those biometric device was mainly used to make us to go to make sure that we can do the interoperability between the system. So as you can see, the customization, we started the Mosip with the version 0.8. We moved with them with the version 1.1, and we tried to make it stable. Based on that, we built our biometric system. And 10 localities in which we went to, do the enrollment. And then not only with the software, not only, the implementation, but apart from that, we had a lot of other, complaint management that gave a lot of experience to see on the field how those things was happening. So this is some of the images, for some places we went. Here you can see this is the Conakry. That was the center, of course, myself, I was supervising. Just the next picture, she was for the last government, she was the minister, head of the department of the Prime Minister office. And then she was making her registration with doctor in that moment. Pore Daka is another village in the Labe. So this was the village on which we went to do the registration. This is also Komora, is another village in Kindia, Furikaria, and Mamu. We make sure that there is no exclusion for vulnerable people. We make sure that we give, priority to them because they are the one who will be more important for us to get the register so that they can benefit from the system on which we try to build. So this was actually the things we had with Mosip.
So as you can see, when we start the Mosip project in Guinea, we had a dream to build a project ourselves by technical team Guinean, to work on important project with 50 million USD. So it was very, very important for us to show that we can lead this kind of project. And that's why we hire Guinean, technical team Guinean in Guinea and Guinean from diaspora to come in Guinea and work with this project. This project also was very important for us because we had a technical support from Mosip in India, and it was COVID situation. So you can see in this moment, we only count in our strength because with the Mosip, we had online meeting only. So it was very difficult to have good support, but we did it through online meeting and so on. He said, we choose Mosip. Mosip is not only for this open source system, but it also an opportunity for us to show our ability to handle this kind of project, to improve the open source code, to make it ourselves, and to serve our people. So that's why we talked about Mosip. We talked about ID system built by Guinean, and somehow to be a kind of model for West African countries, because we were the first country to implement it. And today, ID for us is almost solved. But the problem is not wrapped up, because ID is just a tool. We can identify people, give a unique identification number. But what is the next step? Giving financial services, working with Mojaloop. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere, guys. Okay. Can you hear me now? All right. I'm going to give the first one to Paul, because I know he has been texting me saying he wants to say. And Paul, did your questions get answered, or you have some?
Well, mostly I'd like to say thank you to the team from Guinea. That was extremely impressive, and it kind of echoes an awful lot of experiences we've had in recent years. I could refer you to an ID project I led in Nigeria. The photos looked exactly the same as we had for registration. But no, we in Mojaloop have in the last months begun perhaps reaching out from beyond our own close community into other digital public goods communities, and one of those is actually Mosip, and it's become a hot issue for us to provide an integration between Mosip and Mojaloop, and we have been working with the Mosip team to that end. And we have some proposed solutions as to the best way forward on that, to allow you to allow one to send money to a Mosip ID, for example, and it goes into a nominated financial service account, wherever it may be. And also for your more sophisticated customers, those with a smartphone, for example, which is probably only a fairly small proportion of the population, we can actually give them more sophisticated routing, so they can say, well, for this type of payment, it goes to this account. For that type of payment, it goes to this other account, for example. I would very much welcome the opportunity to work with the team from Guinea on exploring some of these options and gaining a better understanding of your particular experience with Mosip and how we might be able to integrate. So thank you for your presentation today.
Good.
Thank you.
Question?
Hey, yeah, thanks. That's very cool. Two questions.
Yes.
First one, I didn't see a data store, because you're going to be getting a very, very large data store. I saw you had security on the diagram, but what's the data store? That's question one. And secondly, how do people feel about registration? Were they flocking to registration, or did you have to convince them? And are they, in the West, we're all worried about privacy, right? Because the Facebooks and the Instagrams and all those folks. So how do people think about that?
Okay. The thought of the people regarding to registration, the beginning was not easy because we had a communication team who went first and tried to prepare the field, to make sure that while we are, taking that ID first, and then when they prepare the team, the population, the technical team went for the registration. And that also, even when we were in the field, they were there when people used to come, they would tell to people, this number, it is for this, for this, for this. If you have any issue, you need to call this, number, like to try to make people why the need of to get the registration. And we hire another ONG, we call that NGO, who went to do that work before even the registration team came, to do the work.
So it is a process. We start by communication, certification, technical activities, and also compliance management.
Yes. The data. Okay. Actually, we had a data center in Guinea, but that data center gave only electricity and the space. So what happened is like we went to hire the space because of the electricity. We wanted to make sure that we have 100% of electricity so that our data, our servers can be online every time. And then when they gave us the space, now we bring our server, we bring everything. So we use two processes to take the data from the registration to the server. The server was in Conakry. We used the technology VPN. So the first was the SSL VPN, and one was the site-to-site VPN. In our office, we have another office of registration. We make sure that we have the site-to-site VPN. So from that office, when people come to get the register, they get to register directly. After the registration, we reverse the information to the server, and we had our biometric system over there who will go to the deduplication. And even for the deduplication, we use TechFi technology, do the duplication and everything. If it is okay, we will send directly the number, like a message, a SMS message to the one, because when you are doing the registration, you give your number. You will send to the SMS to the guy, say, okay, your things are ready, please go and collect it. So with the VPN, we were able to, push the data from the place of the registration to the data center. And the data center, it was the place where we store the data. Like I was telling we went with the file system. So Hadoop file system, the short way that, all the data were expressing in that moment.
What I would like to add, our system can work function online and offline mode. And when we talk about exclusion, Guinea is not country like US or France and so on. So we have some core areas. People are very excluded about concerning development. So that's why this platform is also sweet to our country, because we don't have internet everywhere. Our platform work online and offline mode. So as data management, you have the first step. You can store data on your laptop. So when you work in offline mode and when you get connected, this synchronization will be done with our central in our local data center, which is Gila. So the second part in this project, we develop Mosip as proof of concept. So that's why we have 10,000, 8,000 registration in July 2021. This platform is our national ID platform, is based on this platform. But in this process, we work on 3 types of the biometrics: iris, fingerprints, and face. So we did also authentication activities process with that. And the last thing is to see how, as Guinean, we can manage fingerprints, identification, and authentication. And today we have these technologies that we handle ourselves. Now, not, because the process is pending. We are in registration process now.
Yeah. Because the first thing was like to show to the government that Mosip could be good for, to be used as our identification platform. And that one, I think we were able, based on the POC we did, to convince the government for that. And they said, yes, they are going to use Mosip. And that moment, our work kind of like done. So the government now move forward. They need now to take a system integrator because it's going to be in the whole country now. So they are going to put more effort and all those stuff. But the first work that was assigned to us, it was to test the Mosip and to show to the government that this can be used for our identification platform. And it is the same thing on which we are thinking to do with Mojaloop, to show to the government, this is the feature, this is the thing that can be used for the financial exclusion.
Yeah, it was a bet because we, as I said, it is 50 million USD funded by the World Bank. So usually we do procurement for this kind of activity. So this opportunity, it was the first time in Guinea to do that because we have biometric system, our passport, also our driver license, but it is some project implemented by private companies, Malaysia, France, and so on. So it was a bet, and definitely we succeed. So that's why today we can develop our national platform based on it. And the second thing is Mojaloop, for us, it's gonna be the same process because people will be afraid if we want to do it nationwide as soon as possible. So that's why let's start for a POC of Mojaloop in Guinea. We have a POC of Mosip, and we can play with it and see how we can interoperate these two platforms and create, reach our goal like public goods and give facilitate access to services to our population.
Two quick questions. Quick one. So first, top marks for pragmatism and actually getting it to work. This is a super difficult thing. So congratulations on that. You mentioned that everything is open source. How was that conversation?
No, in the beginning, when we say open source, people think it is free. That means it's not secure. That means it's not good. So that was actually their thought. So even today, when you talk about the cloud, now in the government, they will say, no, cloud is not good. It's not secure. We want our data here. That also is something, maybe it will change, but not right now. So we make them to understand that open source, it is open, but it is more secure. Why? Because everyone will come and see. Everyone will come and contribute. Now it is the ability of your team that you are going to take intern who will go inside, look at it, try to make it your propriety. And that propriety is not an open source now. It is for you. It is your company, like it is your country, owning or your country product. And when we let them know that, they come to understand, yeah, that means that open source can be different for that one. So yeah, because they will tell you like, okay, if it is open source, somebody sitting in another country, he knows the code, he will come directly and walk through our code. We said, if you give the access to the person, it is that moment the person will use the code, because now you are doing the customization based on your need, and you have some security stuff that you make in such a way that somebody cannot just come and go in. So, but the good part was like some people there, like the actual prime minister, it is a high tech, so he's able to understand now all those stuff, so he can convince even the president. Another things like we have a military, people now in the power, so it's sometimes so much pragmatic for them to move on some solution.
Yeah, and also open source means building capacities we can do ourselves. And open source is also save money because you can control the cost. And at the end, open source is technical sovereignty for our country.
Yeah.
So this is the criteria that lead our thinking. And
so some of the countries that have implemented the systems that struggle to actually deliver the physical ID card to the people after enrolling them. Do you print that card in real time? Or you anticipating the same problems, or are you also considering using digital identity cards in the future?
The point was like, it was not easy, first of all. And then in the code, like the first thing we tried to understand first, the code. We really tried to understand the code, and it took time for us. And then when we understood the code, there's a lot of things that was not needed for our system. We forgot about that. And all those things that was needed for us, we tried to build it. The first thing, even you see the UI design right now in the Mosip, it was coming with 2 languages. In Guinea, we have only French. We don't have another second languages. So we directly changed even the UI design architecture part. We tried to make as what we wanted. So in some of the time, we were able to go even in the deep of the core to change some of the stuff so that it can respond exactly the need of what we want to give to our people. We had the luck to, to go even deeper. And of course, the Mosip team was, really helpful for us in that moment, because they really trained us, and then they gave us time to ask the right question, and to ask the right question, and to make us understand. That make us to go even the deeper of the thing. And that the good part was like, even today, last week, we were in conference with Ethiopia. We want to go with Mosip. Togo, we support them in some of the stuff. So even Ivory Coast. So it depends now when they see that we have that, ability, and we know how to speak French. It is more easier for the French-spoken country to speak with country in French who already did the solution. Yes, we had a chance to go even the code and modify a lot of things. And even we contribute in some of the stuff, maybe the later, as we don't have more time, I may show you all those stuff. Thank you.
To prove again this good understanding, when we start with Mosip team, they gave us some compatible devices, Mantra and
Mantra SyncBike.
But when we have good understanding of the Mosip, we integrate another device from Thales ourselves.
Because for the beginning, Mosip was only working with Mantra and SyncBike. So after the integration with Mantra and SyncBike was, working more peaceful for us than Mantra even. And then we went to Thales, and then Thales gave us their device, we integrated, and we were able also to register on that. And that was not done before with the Mosip, because we helped to deploy the MDS with Thales team. Yeah, the physical call, what was there, like they had a repo. We had a repo on GitHub, and then in that repo, we had the access of all the code. So we follow the same process of coding, like we receive, and then after that, you will send to the code review, we check the code review. At the end, we'll send the code review to Mosip, and then they will check if the review we have done or the code we have done, it can be integrated in the platform. When they approve that, they integrate, and then they send back to us, and we launch in our system.
We need to wrap up.
Yeah.
There's clearly a lot of interest here. So I mean, they look like, go check with them afterwards. There's a couple of things I just want to point out. One, the Mosip Foundation team was providing you guys a lot of the support and direction and guidance and assistance. As I said, Mojaloop is very different. The Mojaloop Foundation team doesn't do that. However, this is the community. They come from a lot of different places. So there's a couple of things I'd like to point out, because it's very difficult to figure out how to navigate. So first is, as you heard Paul online, those who know Paul, he is a payments and identity expert. So he will be overall leading the Mosip integration. And so he'll be working very closely with you. He's already said hi. I'd like Sam from our core team. Sam, please stand up because this is important. Sam has actually been identified to work directly with the Mosip team with Paul on that. So you will need to know Sam. He's going to be working on the Mosip implementation. The other thing is we got to see a whole bunch of all the people you had to hire to do this. Anybody in here who works on assigning human resources to projects and can identify what talent is needed to actually do something, please raise your hand. I'm looking at Jane. Okay. They had to set up business requirements up front and what they need. Anybody here who works on business requirements and product requirements for Mojaloop who might be able to help them with that, please raise your hand.
Okay.
I know some of you guys can do that too.
Correct.
Okay. All right. One of the biggest threats that they identified is the vested interest of big financial institutions. We have faced that in a number of countries. Anybody here who has experience on how to find ways to overcome the challenges of big financial institutions, please raise your hands. Okay. And I'm looking at me as well. All right. So there are people here who are able to help you. But again, like I said, Sam's leading the Mosip integration. So you'll be working with him and Paul quite often. A lot of other people will want to contribute to this. So everyone, please get to know them, understand what their needs are. We are hoping to kickstart this proof of concept POC. We use POC. We're going to say POC from here on out. And thank you, Dr. Medin. Thank you, Ferdinand. Incredibly interesting session.
Thank you.